in this exploration of the wound, the architecture of identity, of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, that blocks and obscures our connection with the ecological whole, with the one with which we are innately connected through the possibility field, through mathematical formula, through physics. It all begins with the Big Bang, at least according to our current mythology. And from there, everything, like a tree growing out, and the roots and the branches growing out in all directions of the multiverse. And everything is part of the one tree, and everything has the original source. That possibility field connects each of us, taking different branches at different points, but we are all connected. Now, the lens of perspective in that connection changes from the ego, the identity, the pattern that identifies with the pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. We're looking from here through the gateway over into there. Well, I guess I drew it behind my back there, but there's a lens. And from here, the ego, looking through the lens, is looking at the ecology. And from here, the ecology, the one, is looking at the ego. And things look differently. Now, this helps to make sense of the inversion of perspective that often happens under the influence of psychedelics. Side note, don't explore psychedelics until you've done at least 100 hours of research, including the statistical awareness of how often things go wrong and why. Meaning that there's perhaps a 10% chance that a psychedelic journey or exploration will be the worst trauma in your adult life that leads to the unraveling of the known identity and the dismantling of one's life into chaos and a confrontation with the abyss. And then there's perhaps a 70% chance that it is one of the most profoundly beautiful, transcendent experiences of your life. Well, anything that you can do consistent with that 100 hours of research to create the latter is an act of self-love. And any dishonoring of a probability field that is so strong is an act of stupidity. So, continuing with that evolutionary focus, psychedelics restrict blood to the default mode network. Now, this is a simplification, but certainly in the case of psilocybin, the typical pathways that are allocated for identity, for the patterns of thinking, etc., are restricted. As a result, energy and consciousness flows in transcendent ways. Transcendent of what? Transcendent of the default mode network. of the norm. So the expansion of consciousness comes from the constriction of the cult. The ego being the smallest unit of the cult within every culture that we are a part of. We do this, we don't do this, we talk about this, we don't talk about this. So this is all set up to understand that we're typically looking from within the identity, the ego, out at the rest of us, because it is this partition, this illusionary line created by the membrane, created by the identification with a unique pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, that both defines who we are and obscures everything else that we once were, everything else that in fact we still are, but do not identify with. And then over here, we have the bigger picture, not the biggest, but a bigger picture of all that we are, looking at the bubble, at the prison, at the prism, at the identity of the ego, and seeing the various masks that we use to obscure our connection. Now, love is the ultimate connector. And so to some extent, it is impossible, it is difficult to maintain awareness of our unique identity, the I that identifies with a repeating pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And confront the overwhelming energy of unconditional love flowing from all directions on all dimensions, saying, welcome home. You are here. You've never left. You've just put on a mask. If you remove the mask, we're here. We've always been here. We're waiting for you to see the innate threads. You know, there's absolutely nothing that you can do, that you can create in any way that you can conceive of that doesn't have innate connection to every other thing. You know, how does this pinky connect with the Republican Party? You can find an infinite number of ways to connect that. How does this fingernail connect with Alpha Centauri? How does this unit in the past connect to here? You know, as a geometric actuality, probability field, and possibility field, the lines are radiating out from every idea, every particle, to every other particle in existence. Now, the compound or vehicle for a psychedelic transcendence in this last case yesterday was psilocybin mushrooms and a small amount of San Pedro cactus, maybe about 20% recommended dose for a San Pedro cactus and maybe, I don't know, a third of a dose of, what would be considered a high dose of mushrooms, which I think is 5 grams. dried, psilocybin mushroom. We're talking maybe 1 or 2 grams of mushroom. So a milder dose with both, which I find helps to maintain verbal lucidity, meaning I like to record and notice what I'm seeing. Now, one of the more interesting realizations was that when meaning and labels have been stripped by restricting blood to the default mode network, the entire world becomes animate, becomes meaningful, and becomes the bearer of the most important thing. So the most important thing for any human being, the most meaningful thing for any human being, is that which relates to the wound, which correlates to the continuum of meaning, which is the continuum of well-being. All meaning comes from the desire, the innate desire to feel sustainably better, and the innate desire to avoid feeling chronically worse. That's what gives life meaning. Something is meaningful if it catapults us forward into states of sustainable well-being. Something is meaningful if it catapults us into the depths of hell, horror, and unending chronic suffering. And that which is meaningful is that which takes us into only partial hell, and from there into okay, and from there into sustainable well-being. So we have a continuum. Now, the wound is that which separates us from all that is. It is the deepest wound. It creates the most chronic and unnecessary suffering. And so what I found interesting looking at in front of me there was a wood base and there was a stone base for crystals. So lighted crystals were on top of the base, but my eyes were resting on these 2 bases. Now, if I rationally follow a normal path, I'm not going to focus on a wood base of a crystal to figure out what my suffering is, because my mental brain has not ascribed meaning, such a capacity that's outside of the normal way of thinking. But we're not in normal thought. We're in the domain where all of reality is around us and all of reality is trying to speak to us. And the conscious brain is saying, no, 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 you can't speak to me, you can't speak to me, you can't speak to me, you can't speak to me. If anyone's going to speak to me, it has to come through this little narrow corridor that I have ascribed meaning to. It has to come through the blood of the Virgin Mary. Okay, that's where I guess where it has to show up. But without that limiting factor to obscure flow in from everywhere else, then why not from a base of a crystal? Why not from a shoe, right? Wouldn't it be more intelligent to get the most important message about the most important thing from whatever happens to be nearby? And of course, it is more intelligent. It's just not what we do. We want an organized thing, and we organize things into that which we can receive profound messages from, and that which we can't. And we want to travel to the Himalayas and meet someone with a long beard and laying on beds of nails. And okay, you can tell me the profound thing. But isn't it nicer if a shoe can talk to you, or a fingernail can pipe up and give you the insight you've always desired. It's been waiting a dimension away in front of your very nose, So it's more elegant, and yet it's not the way it should be, according to the identity. And so that is obscured. So I recognized halfway through that I'm having a conversation with a stone crystal base and a wood crystal base. And it's one of the most important conversations of my life. So humility is definitely, a byproduct. But the other thing that I notice is that, on this side of the line, things are going like that. But on this side of the line, things are going like that. In other words, there's a tension. Looking from this side, we're pointing here, and looking from this side, we're pointing here. And the summation of that is that the exact opposite of everything on one side, of how something looks, is the way it looks from the other side. In other words, one of the values of a psychedelic journey is to look through the eye of the opposite, is to look through the eye that transcends the polarity of the identity and its position. So, a little preamble. In the psychedelic state, the visionary state, one of the things that I have been seeing is this shape. Now, for those Lord of the Ring fans who watch the movies, you can see this shape as the Eye of Sauron, because it has that kind of energy. There's a lot of that kind of red intensity around it. And it's a pretty narrow slit. But the image and the feeling tone of this slit correlates with the sense of the deepest wound, the deepest hardness, the deepest hurt, the deepest pain. Now, the image that was useful for me as I look at this was that over here you have source, and over here you have me. So you have other people, you have reality, you have nature, you have life, you have the world. And here you have me. And there's all of these energy flows that are constructive and supportive, that want to and are in fact trying to and in fact flowing between all things. But the wounded, traumatized child and adolescent are not interested in any of that. They're interested in the energy flowing in through a very particular cave, a very particular structure of what is and isn't love. And this structure here is a belief. It is a belief that I am not lovable. And it is a muscle. It's a muscle, very much like a vagina, that can block energy flow going through it. It's got barbed wires. It's got opening and closed hours. It's got routines and protocols. Something trying to get through this wound, through this orifice that is defined as the only, so the first part of the construction of the wound is only this. You know, the child that's had, you know, had enough lies, enough toying around, enough things, says, only this, I'm not budging unless I get my strawberry ice cream or whatever it is. So, you know, this, it's only going to be this thing and in this way and in this thing, and that's it. So that's the first bit of construction of the wound, only this. And so from that point, every other form of energy, of love, of possibility is negated. If you don't do this, I'm not interested. And, you know, this, from the ego perspective, makes perfect sense because you know, you can think of, like, I'm going through a real estate sale at the moment. And the person selling me the property wants to talk about this and wants to talk about this and wants to talk about this and wants to talk about this. But the only thing that I need to know is, does their attorney have the power of attorney to act on their behalf? Because that's holding up the sale. Well, he doesn't respond to that email. Then he talks vaguely. Then he'll says, we'll get that in motion. But he still wants to talk about, you know, everything else but the thing that I'm focused on. And so when you have that, you know, when the child wants to have a story and dad wants to pontificate about this and do that and talk about this and talk about that, and basically the pattern is that of string someone along and run around. Well, the counter response is, I'm not cooperating until you show the fuck up. You don't want to talk about this? Fuck off. I'm not going to be run around. Now, this is an important part of identity building, meaning there's plenty of people who will run you around endlessly and try and push you as far as you can possibly go, off center here, off balance there, you know, and just see where you are, with nothing other than a morbid curiosity for how much they can throw you off balance. And so the response is this, or we're not playing, is a structure of identity, and defining what those things will be and picking them is simultaneously. See, from the ego point of view, we've stopped the helplessness, we've stopped the runarounds, we've stopped the energy drain, the exhaustion, the confusion. Why are we talking about this when the document we need is this? I mean, it's insanity, right? And there's peace. Get it together, do it like this, or fuck off. You know, I've got something there. So that's how it looks like from the ego point of view. This is not how it looks like, though, from the other point of view. Because from the other point of view, it's like all of the energy comes down to this narrow thing. If you don't want to do this, this, and this, I'm not interested. You know, in a relationship, you know, undress and put out, or we're through, right? Or pay up and do this or I'm not putting out, right? There's, from a relationship point of view, there's both the need to identify the withholding areas, the blocks, the frustrating points, and kind of challenge those. And there's also the need to be open to a variety of different ways of flow. It's a challenging domain, particularly in a chauvinistic cult where there's just so much. If you allow yourself to be run around, for example, the cult views you as inferior, not as open, or etc. So there's presuppositions on these types of dynamics, and this is all from the ego point of view. From the psychedelic point of view, from the more transcendent point of view, what I saw is there's all of this love, there's all of this goodwill, there's all of this care, there's all of this honor, there's all of this hope and wish for my well-being. There's all of these beautiful wishes in so many ways that don't go through the heart of the wound, that don't touch on the core wound. Now, the core wound is the belief that I'm unlovable based on a set of circumstances: childhood neglect, childhood trauma, withholding, violence, all of that in childhood. That says I am unlovable because if I was lovable, somebody would be loving me. And they're not. And they're hurting me, they're hating me, they're enjoying my humiliation. That's not love. They're dissociating from me, they're transferring to me, they're objectifying me. I'm not lovable. And in the construction of that wound, there is a very set wind, meaning that particular belief is tightened and tightened and tightened and tightened. And there's a very specific path to unwind that belief and burst it open and say, okay, I am lovable again. And the fear of the unknown, the fear of losing control, the fear of chaos is a resistance, meaning I have identified with the wound, with the pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that is congruent, that makes sense with that wound. And so if I loosen up that wound, if I loosen up that configuration, I face the beautiful unknown and the terror of being out of control. I face the confrontation of death and my greatest fears. So this is the crisis. And so the part of me that is afraid of change, that is afraid of being out of control, makes it harder and harder for people to get near and beyond the wound. So they show up with love, but they showed up without calling in advance. They're supposed to make an appointment, It's almost love, but it wasn't. It's almost love, but it was after 6 p.m. You didn't call, and you just showed up on the door. What do you think I am, a doormat? Is that a message I'm not worth respecting enough to be called in advance? You didn't ask me. It was what I wanted, but how did you know that? You didn't ask me. What you're supposed to do is ask me what I want, then I'll tell you, and then you can do it, and then it's love. But if you just do it, that's arrogant. You didn't check with me first. So there's all of these, little prisons and doorways that make this and that. So there's the right intensity, and that was the right this, and that's the right this. But really what there is in there is the terror of the entire identity imploding and exploding, because the entire identity is founded on the belief, meaning I wouldn't do these things if I didn't believe that I was unlovable. I would do these things if I believed I was lovable. And I'm not doing those things, and I am doing these things. And so I would think these things if I believed I was lovable. I would not think these things. So we're talking about a pivot, a 180-degree pivot of identity, which means I'm out of control, because you cannot be certain of all of the things that might or might not happen when you pivot 180 degrees. I can't be certain. You can't be certain. So how do you pivot without losing control? You can't. So what do you do? What do I do? I make sure that people are not going to get through. And so I have my child's idea that the right way to love me is to do this, in this way, at this time, for this reason, after discussing this, and then this. And I'm enraged that no one wants to do it. Now, I have been enraged about that for a long time. I know exactly what the recipe is for all of that. It seems like a decent, reasonable recipe. Now, why the fuck don't people want to do it? And some of it, one of the things that I see is that some of it is there's an undertone of punishment, meaning you are going to go into, here's my little maze inside the dark cave. You're going to go in there and you're going to feel out of control. You're going to feel small. You're going to wonder where you are. You're going to wonder if there's an end on the other side. You're going to feel all the things that I felt as a terrified, traumatized child, trying to make it into this world, trying to connect unsuccessfully with both parents. And you're going to be beaten up along here. And then if you make it through, you'll come out the other side, and then we will live happily ever after. Then you can be a friend, etc. As long as you do this and don't violate this. And there are rules. You have to do like this and not like this and this and this. And so if someone is willing to do all that, then we can have a great relationship. But I'm furious, at how few people are willing to do this and this. Why the fuck can't they do this? Why don't they understand this and that, the other, right? So a lot of what I saw is just the punishing thing. I'm not going to be lovable. I'm not going to live as if I'm loved. I'm not going to love myself. And I'm not going to let go of this structure. This is the way this is. And people are going to go through it, or they don't love me, and fuck them, right? Fuck the bastards. So this is a structure that I'm looking at in a wood bowl, or a wood base and a stone base. I'm seeing this shape, and I'm seeing how it functions. And, you know, I'm realizing I'm realizing a couple of things. One, people have to get on pins and needles to try and make their way through all this barbed wire. That's the first thing. It's impossible to do and have fun. Meaning people can go into this tangled wire and do this and this and this. I can, you know, I can show them quite easily. You take a 45-degree angle here, you go like this here, then you do like this, then you do like that, but not like that, like this. Then you go like this, then you go like this, over around and around here, then this. And these are the reasons why it should be done. This is how it should be done. This is when it should be done. These are the values that should be behind doing this. And it's simple. Just do it, right? So, you know, that seems perfectly reasonable, makes perfect sense. You know, there's reasons behind every one of these little curves. You know, Mom always lied to me and said this, so I'm not having that. I want a deadline. You say you're going to do this when? When are you going to do it? You're going to do it by Sunday. Okay, let's see. Let's see if you do it by Sunday. You didn't do it on Sunday. Fuck you. You know, there you are again, running me along, right? So that's the construction. So the main kind of realization, because I've been waiting my whole life for people to, you know, move through these little barbed wire things and do this, whatever. And to me, it's this flowing gateway, you know, roads of gold, you know, these are broad pathways and stuff. But what I was seeing was the enjoyment that I take when people stumble and feel small and helpless. I was seeing that tremendous hurt and loneliness, meaning this is how I felt as a child, trying to desperately relate to somebody, and the giants around me doing little games. So, you know, this is an inversion of my parents' game towards a 6-year-old. My father dragged me around in a sack up and down the stairs. How is it, son? Are you enjoying yourself? Oh, let's do it again. You know, drag up and down the stairs, do this. Abandonment games in the forest, this, that, the other. I mean, there's an endless amount of torture that was directed at a 5-year-old. And I had to figure out how to sidestep all of this malice, all of this hurt, all of this disappointment. And there was no room for love. There was no room for innate, beautiful bonding. You know, that wasn't as interesting as running me through the maze of their torture cell. And so, you know, I felt smaller and smaller and smaller and more inadequate as every child makes their torture about them. I believe this was all about me. It was my fault that I was being tortured. I was unlovable, right? So all of those small feelings, you know, try one more time, and getting laughed at and clipped at, you know, that hurt, that anger. Ah! Ah! Get off! That I couldn't do at 3 and 4 and 5, because then that was humiliated. There was no safe haven. The grief around that, the hurt around that, the smallness around that, needing to live and grow, and being met with so much cruelty. Taken on, taken on, taken on. Well, at an ego level, First of all, that's all that I know. Secondly, why should I be the only one to suffer in these inane prison cells? And this wound, by the way, is a universal wound. It's not, we're not talking about Dane here as an anomaly within a cult that is filled with grace and flowing love. We're talking about the prison and filtering mechanism that every traumatized ego forms to protect themselves from the sociopathic element in the environment. And, I meet this same shape most of the time when I connect with people. I meet this shape. They don't want to go through my shape, but they want me to go through their shape. And so this is a little dance. And, I would say more so in the US, meaning American women, more so than many, if there is the proposition for some form of love and beauty and innocence, it's like, you're attracted to me? Okay, well, go through my shape and let's see if you get through the other side. If you're not dead by the time you come out the other side, well, then we'll talk. But I'm going to block you here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to discount you here. I'm not going to have any room for this here. I'm going to make sure you don't have any impact on me over here. None of this. And then why aren't there any men to love me, right? And so, this, it's the same. It's the same shape. It's the same wound. We are surrounded by love and bliss in the probability field. You see, it's not crystallized, but there's a probability field, and it's not as dense, but it is far more luminous in many cases than what will fit into our actual beliefs and choices, here. It's far more luminous. So we'll take a little pause here and continue later. In the break, and the reason for the break was I had a contract, or I had an appointment with a concrete contractor. And the filter that I've set up there is, first we'll meet at my house at 4 p.m. And multiple reasons for this. First of all, understanding that maybe 30% of contractors are flaky for this type of setup. So that's one thing. The second thing is, if they are flaky, it's no point giving them a concrete job. Why? Because concrete has its own schedule. And it doesn't care about you running late and running into traffic and all that. Concrete dries when it dries, and you have to be there at its schedule. And so, if they are late, there's no point in going to the job, is the idea. And there's a couple of other filters as well. I like to deal with someone who's pleasant to deal with because my customer is going to be dealing with them as well. And so there's things like that. Those are filters. And he didn't pass my filter. Number one, he didn't show up at 4. Number 2, there was no message. And number 3, when I called him at 4:15 to see what was up, he didn't answer the phone. So that's kind of a blow off as far as I can tell. But either way, 100% of my interactions with him to date, the only appointment, he's been late for in a job that requires precision. Now, I'm left feeling, and I had mentioned that I was going to go there with my clients so that they would be in the loop. So I feel kind of a pain in my stomach here, kind of down in the abdomen. I also feel a little tingling up here. I feel hurt. I feel a little bit of shame, humiliation, and I feel a little bit of, foolishness, a little bit of helplessness, a little bit ungrounded. So what's that about? So number one, I live in a cult that is, all about time and efficiency. He, as a chauvinist, he got the job done, on time, is the metric. Not he was happy, he was, any number of other things. He made my daughter smile. It's all out of the way, right? Did the job get done on time? So every cult defines its orifice to measure in or out, right? You belong, you don't belong, you're good, you're bad, right? And it's this same, orifice as we're talking here. Every cult defines that. And in America, and within a capitalist framework, time is money. Money is the highest deity. If you waste someone's money, you're a bad person. If money wastes a person, well, that's just a person. But if you waste somebody's money, that's terrible. Because when you define yourself within a paradigm, in this case, capitalism, it's not peopleism, it's capitalism. Now, if you defined yourself as a peopleism place, then if you dishonored the person, if you didn't connect with them in a meaningful way, you would be a bad person. And, money is neither here nor there. But we're doing it the other way around. And so money is at the top of the deity hierarchy. And next comes efficiency of time, because time is money. So time becomes subjugated to money and linked in that way. And then the value of a person is then linked to the efficiency with which they utilize your time and their time. And so as an American, probably the greatest compliment, the greatest esteem that I've been given is that was really efficient. In fact, I'm operating heavy equipment on this particular job, and I've innovated some ways to transplant larger trees with heavy equipment very efficiently. So basically doing what might take 6 hours for 3 people in 20 minutes, and more carefully and all that. So they watched me do this and they filmed it, and then they sent it to one of their landscape architect friends, and they looked at it, and the feedback was, we've never seen it done that way. So efficient. You just get, how did you learn that skill? So what I'm being honored for is efficiency. Now, subcontractors are out of my sphere of influence to some degree. Obviously, I'm never going to hire this person again, but I'm left kind of with a choice. Do I bet that this person honors their word? That includes being aware enough about their life to know when they can be where. Do I bet that, or do I not? And if I do, including my customer is a bonus. Now, in this situation, saying I'll be by with a concrete contractor who doesn't show up, I then write and say, the subcontractor flaked out. Now, when we understand that money is the top of the hierarchy and we understand that people are doing things for money, one story that comes up around the flake out of a contractor is they didn't value you enough, or they didn't think you had enough money to be worth their time, or whatever it is. Because within the capitalist hierarchy, someone will devote their time to the person they believe will make them the most money. So to blow someone off and not even repair the relationship, i.e., could we reschedule, that kind of thing, is to say, basically, I'm doing this for money, but I don't need your money. I don't want your money, whatever. I've got, a richer person, a bigger job, whatever, something to do that. Now, in a cult that preconditions us to value the individual based on money. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, if you're one of the many homeless individuals in the United States, there's only one reason you're homeless, and that's money. Why? Because there isn't anyone who wouldn't sell you a home if you had enough money, because money is the top of the hierarchy. There isn't anyone who wouldn't sell you a home if you had money. And there isn't anyone, statistically speaking, there is the odd one, but there isn't anyone, statistically speaking, who has a few million in the bank and says, I just prefer to live in a culvert or listening to the freeway noise with drizzle, in the winter and cold. I just prefer being woken up at night by the local police and being told to move along to nowhere in particular. So, as long as my money is safe, and that is, when you value people so much by money, nothing else, you do have the hoarding, miserly response, which is, I don't want any of my value to escape. And so you might have the odd person with millions who won't spend a penny because housing is too expensive. They don't want to give up that much of their value in order to actually spend it. So there is that, that tendency. But still, the only reason anyone's homeless is they don't have money. If you are homeless, you'll lose 27 years of your life, statistically speaking. A life is shortened by 27 years on average for living that life on the street as opposed to living that life in a house. Okay, so that's 8 hours a day of human life going up in smoke because you don't have money. You're also treated with contempt, with shame, with indifference, with impatience, with judgment and blame if you don't have money. If you have money, you are treated with great respect. You watch how a homeless person who is presumed not to have any money is treated when they walk into a store, and you watch how a billionaire, who is a known billionaire, is treated when they walk into the same store. And to the extent that the store owner has bought into the deity hierarchy with money on top, well, then the red carpet must be spent out. Why? Not because you like the person, but because they have money. And so there's the Forbes 400 list, which is all about money and measuring money. And so, these are the measures, and people go to great lengths. Former President Trump manipulated his assets, his appraisals, and argued that he should be higher on the Forbes 400 list because he wanted to feel more important. And he knew that in a capitalist cult, the only way to be viewed as more important was to have more money. So it's not the only way, because we also pay some tributary to science. But how many people know the 400 top innovative scientists of a given year? And how many people know who's on the top of the Forbes 400, right? We don't know the name of the top teacher in the cult, in the world. We don't know the name of the best parent. We don't know the name of the kindest human being. We don't know the name of the best friend in the world. We don't know the name of the best chef. We know the name of the richest person in the world in a cult that deifies a symbol of value above human life. Because if you're out on the street, you're going to lose 7 hours of human life in the next 24 hours. And you wouldn't be on the street if you didn't have money. And so there's this idea that I'm not a good source of money. Why would somebody reject Dane's money? That brings up the trigger because I'm unlovable, right? Love means you do what you say you will do. Love means that you respect the other person's time, money, by showing up. Love means you communicate and value the other person, not waiting around and wasting their time, money. And so all of that has just been kind of knocked over by someone who's probably not worrying one way or another about any of that particular thing. There was an easier way to feel good, and talking about it, let's just go and do whatever it is, right? And so that's, what the concrete contractor does. And of course, I'm never going to work with them again. But part of that is they didn't go through the filter, right? So here's the filter. And the question is, what's a good filter? Meaning, I'm never going to use this contractor again, in part because they made me feel hurt and small, and in part because, well, as I say, concrete waits for no one when it's wet, and wondering, what expedient opportunity came up for the concrete person on the day of the pour, is, in a cult like this, it's also not too surprising that he is out of work now and wants work now. And my job would probably be done sometime, next week. And why is he out of work in a country that needs good stamped concrete all the time? Well, it's not surprising that if you don't show up on time and show courtesy when bidding, that people wouldn't want to hire you or hire you again or give you good reviews. So, that's, just the way that works. And so, that's its own dynamic. But we're looking at the wound. So I feel badly because what if my customer came home to be around when I said I would be there? So I'm emailing, I'm no longer coming because the guy didn't show up. Well, if the guy didn't show up, it also suggests that perhaps I didn't do enough research to find a more competent person. Perhaps I don't have it together. meaning that they cannot rely on me because I'm depending on unreliable people. And all of that makes me feel small, makes me feel horrible, makes me feel alone, because, I stopped this video to be on time for an appointment that somebody didn't show up at. Now, within this wound here, I'm getting tighter. I'm getting more stubborn. In fact, this wound is already a little bit of a tight wound, meaning because I feel this way every time somebody does this type of thing, the person has already gone through my assistant filter. So my assistant has talked with them twice, and my assistant made an appointment with them. And then I called them and confirmed the appointment, and then they didn't show up. So they've gone through 3 checkpoints. Now, it's worth noting that 70% of the contractors didn't make it through this. This was the only contractor that actually made it through to this point in the filtering. The other one is refusing to send photographs of their work. Others are waiting to reply, right? So this is the best of a filtration process of more than 10 contractors. And I feel terrible, uncomfortable, tight. And the worst case scenario is that, the concrete truck shows up, the concrete guy doesn't show up, the customer's saying, what's happening? The neighbors are asking, what's going on? What's going on? And my client is telling them, we don't know. The concrete guy isn't showing up. And then I say, I don't know what's going on, right? Because again, within chauvinism, if you know something, you're valuable. If you do not know, you are to be treated with contempt, to be dismissed. Well, we don't need to hear from you. You don't know what's going on. We need to hear from who does know what's going on. And I don't want to feel like that unwanted 3-year-old again. And so, this is the way that the barbed wires get put up. Layer by layer by layer by layer by layer. A logical step, if I could get anyone to pass through it, was you pay me $500. And if you don't show up, I keep the money. And if I don't show up, you get $500 and stop dinking around. And if you don't really think there's a good chance, you wouldn't even take that with 50-50 odds, that you're going to actually win, that we're going to meet, and get the hell out of here, right? So that's, that's a response to this hurt. This hurts. The idea, and what hurts is the idea, the images. We have a future probability field. So that's what we have up here, is we have a probability field. It could go this way, this way, this way. But all of the pictures, all of the probabilities with my concrete guy not showing up on concrete day, they all lead me feeling small and stupid, right? So it feels like you, contractor, maybe, you want me to live in that world, and I don't want to live in that world. You're setting me up to fail. You're setting me up to look stupid. So I'm saying, no, I'm not going to go anywhere with you because I don't like any of those probabilities. The probabilities are also defined by the cult. The probabilities are not, oh, that nice contractor is doing the best he can. The probabilities go to the dark side in the American cult. So those contractors, what are they thinking? Blocking the street. They're always doing this. They don't care about people. That the predisposition within the cult is negative in a situation like this. It's not Dane cared so much about the concrete job that he called 10 people, filtered them through this and this, and there aren't any good concrete people. Right? So that's also the, where we're getting into that same terrain as there aren't any good women, there aren't any good men, right? Well, I just said you had to have a PhD, you have to make $200,000 a year, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to come from this person, you have to have a voice like this, you have to be, 6 feet or higher, you have to be this, you have to be Caucasian, and, nobody met all of those filters. Why aren't there any good men? Why aren't there, all of this stuff? So this is how the barbed wire gets filled. So, if I could, I would add the $100 penalty back and forth to anyone who didn't flake up. My hatred level goes up because I feel badly. I understand the American cult and its judgment cycle, but I feel helpless. I don't really know what else to do. Have an assistant filter things twice, make an appointment, confirm the appointment an hour and a half in advance. Not much more filtering I can do. I also don't know what to do if nobody else got that far. Right? So that's the same situation I had with a Tyler earlier, last year. The only person who got through the filter began doing two things: avoiding the most important part of the job that was actually beyond their competency without admitting it, refusing to do it. So I would say, do this job first, and I would arrive and they'd be over here. And I'd say, do this, and they'd be over here. So what do I do, right? Get rid of them? There's always, with a mistake within chauvinism, there's always shame. Why couldn't I find a better contractor? Why, what's wrong with me? What's, all of this type of stuff. So the contractor then began to badmouth me to the client because they were afraid of looking bad if I fired them. So they did all of these different things, and that's the only contractor who made it through the filters, who actually had some references that did this. And so what this means is that the filter is faulty. So we need this filter. There's rationality in not wanting someone late for concrete pour. There's rationality in saying, I'd like a brain surgeon to do my brain surgery and not a kindergartner. So a meta within a meta, the irrigation turned on while doing this. And that irrigation has been turning on this was the first time I've noticed it around here, but it's also been turning on like at 1 a.m. in the middle of the night when I'm making a video. In both cases, it shows up, in the soundscape. And this brings up, again, shock, disorientation. These are PTSD symptoms. Hurt. Why isn't anyone thinking of me? The bottom line, why does everything always go wrong? Why wasn't my wife thinking about, because she set up that timer last time, why wasn't she thinking about the right timing, the ideal time for plants? Is it maybe 7 or 8 a.m.? That's also the best time for me. Why is it going on at 2 wrong points? So that then brings up to the why doesn't my wife want to learn this and that? So we're back into helplessness. There's too many things. I'm fighting too many battles. Trying to get people to learn things they don't want to learn. Keeping doing these, fixing all of the problems that need to be fixed. And then this particular irrigation timer is one I've never seen before. So it's a hassle. And then the garage is regularly messy with both what I do in the garage and the deterioration into chaos as my wife takes things in and out of the garage. And so getting to the irrigation system that I don't know, and then I can't maintain coherence, meaning I lose the pattern of ideas. And so the whole thing just feels, why is everything doing, oh, poor me, everything's falling apart. And I feel like the only response that I can pull off around, that, I feel tired. There wasn't the right food in the fridge earlier, and I'd bought these burritos specifically to give me protein for this time of day. Since as a vegetarian, there's only a few things that can kind of really give that solid source of energy. One of them's eggs. The bread is out. And then my wife ate the burrito. So I go in there, there's no bread, there's the burrito. So it's one thing after another. The concrete guy is trying to make me look dumb. My wife's eating the burrito. I try to feed her. No, she's not hungry. She doesn't want anything. But the one thing that I need, of course, let's just take the last one and do that. And then the irrigation. And then she feels her own, burden. Oh, why do I have to do this right now? I have to do this because of Dane's video. So she has her own whole, construct around all of this. So then I'm in a cult where if I behave like this, it's so tiring. It's like, I just mumble my complaints, So that's how I feel. And so if I just, I have a lot of judgment towards myself as a protection to discourage all of the judgment I expect from other people, meaning I expect that clients won't hire that persona. I expect that women won't have sex with that persona. I expect that Americans won't want to talk with that persona. And therapists won't show up for that persona. They want you to get out of that mode, drive in a car, go over there, and do all this stuff so that they can understand it at a convenient time for them and be paid. Well, this one... This isn't bad. There might be some way through this, reflection and tiredness or whatever. It's not what you want to watch. And so, I'm moving through that, to provide the socially accepted persona that the cult demands in order to engage with, which also brings up a certain amount of hostility. It's like, I should have to do this. Like I told it's incredibly irritating. I just heard, as someone with PTSD, peripheral sounds bother me. And so I've asked my wife if she wanted to go in the bedroom, I can have a door closed, but she's kind of in the ambiance eating. So there's a little sound of a plate. Well, when's the next one going to be? So that throws me off of my flow. So this is a deterioration into a state that this cult doesn't know how to love, doesn't know how to help, doesn't respect, doesn't engage with. And it is tiring to move from this state into the part, the cult wants a funny person. The cult wants an articulate, an animated person, someone that will provide adrenaline for their adrenaline compulsions. I'm getting bored. You're not providing me enough adrenaline. Give me something. Do something titillating. Do this. The demand for performance. It's exhausting. And so my response to this is hostility. No, you get through this here. Do it now. I don't want to hear about your exhaustion, your blah, 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 your long list of stupid reasons why you're not going to show up on time, do this, why you had to eat my burrito. I don't want to hear any of that. Just shut the fuck up and get through it the same way that I'm telling myself to shut the fuck up and get through the exhausted, tired persona into the persona that the cult will accept. So, if I'm going to have to work through that, you'd be damn sure you are as well. You think I'm going to just sit here and try and make out what you're drooling, whining parts? Shut the fuck up. I've made myself articulate. I've done this. I've done that. I've done this. So that's, this is on the ego side of this wound. I don't want to feel this hurt. I don't want to feel helpless. I don't want to wonder, will the new contractor I've scheduled tomorrow at 3, are they going to also, fail to show up and make me look foolish? And the words around. I'm actually interested in this tired part because it's an unusual curve or turn to just be here. Let me just be here. See, I want to be liked. I want to be respected. I want to be cared about. I want to be cuddled. I want to be all these things. And you as a cult probability field, what I mean by that is 70% of the time or more, 85% of the time or more. You as a cult probability field demand that I be brilliant and lucid and blah, 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 fit some matrix. And then there will be a certain number of people that will start off with respect and favorable interest and then have the predisposition to giving me the cuddles and likes that I want. Now, that's on one side. On the other side, to really be of service in this area involves being vulnerable and being 100% truthful. Otherwise, everyone has all seen people trying to look good a million or so times. And to look good in a chauvinistic cult, you have to lie. You have to sublimate the parts that don't look good, and you have to lead with the parts that look good. But that's tiring. And so in the tighter part, I don't want to do it. I don't want to put on the performance that does all of this. And I think most of the people, trying to connect with me don't want to do it and don't want to put on the performance either. So I'm actually first and foremost constructing this wound, or constructing this orifice through which all proper energy has to flow. And there's all this energy out here, everywhere, all around, but if it won't flow in the right direction through this orifice, I'm saying, no, that's not good enough. Well, I'm the first one that has to get through the orifice. Now, the orifice is constructed by the cult, given to the family system, given to the individual, given to me. And having found that getting through the orifice successfully pays enough dividends in order to at least survive and be somewhat secure in that survival, however miserable the life is, I'm forcing myself through the orifice, and I'm demanding that other people go through the orifice. The truth is, I'm tired of going through the orifice. One of the most exciting and energizing things I've done in a month was loud singing last night. And it was, while watching a Coldplay video, what was it, in reverse, stuck in reverse, whatever. That whole energy broke the sound, and when bypassing the default mode network, I was aware that I'm crossing a line, that neighbors might hear me and stuff like that. But that's the beautiful thing with psychedelics, is how can we move energy without worrying about, the status quo. So it's an antidepressive, because a depressive is all about trying to get all this massive amounts of energy into this orifice, and it can't fit. And then it's tangled with all these barbs and limits and stuff. It gets lost. It's like taking this torrent of vast water and making it ripple its way through miles of weeds, and everything slowing down and getting kind of lost in that tangle. And so, when you can just let energy go by, singing, running, shouting, playing, there's it doesn't get bogged down with so much constriction. You can take a pipe of water and just put 90s on that, and every 90 you'll lose 1 psi, and you just keep moving, putting 90s and making the pipe longer, and eventually bare dribble gets out, and eventually nothing will get through. Still a pipe of water. There's just so many 90s, so much tangle of this and that and the other, that there's 60 psi pressure on the other side, and you've got 80 psi of resistance throughout the entire pipe. Nothing gets through. And I feel dead and hollow. And that is my feeling, dead and hollow. There's tremendous blocks here and tremendous blocks there, and all this here. And so this tiny little trickle of water makes it out of the fissured, traumatic boulders that have defined a lifetime of terror and ruination. So we're going to wrap this up, because trying to get through this in a way that passes those filters is exhausting, frankly. Now, one of those filters is I'm sick and tired with all the people who don't understand what I'm saying and don't understand that they don't understand what I'm saying and think that they do understand what I'm saying and tell me that they understand what I'm saying. And every single time I check, okay, what do you think I'm saying? Say something that is anywhere from 30 to 180 degrees different from what I'm actually saying. So I find this basically a default assumption, meaning there's a 90% chance that if I just cover the top points of something, that if I just say psychedelics, there's a 90% chance that people will think I'm recommending psychedelics without the caveat. If I just say this, there's a 90% chance that people will not know what I mean by that, or even think it through, or even form an opinion. It's an absurd degree of complacency about ignorance, stupidity, and projection. And it's fine to some extent if people grasp that they have no idea what they're listening to, unless they that's to some extent. But having decided that they do know what I'm saying and acting upon that, they get mad at me when I don't act consistent with the projections that they thought would be me based on what they thought I said that I didn't say. This drives me nuts. So I have to, do 5 to 10 minute discourses on every little subpoint in order to not have that happen, because I'm sick of it. I'm sick of idiots who don't know they're idiots in communication and who think that they get it. And I'm sick of, when I get tired of that, having to, okay, so what is it exactly you think that you heard? I've got an angry person upset with me because they misunderstood me. I don't want to deal with an angry person upset with me because they misunderstood me. So I now have to try and patiently figure out what it was that the other person projected on that they don't get, right? Well, that's that. Who wants to deal with that? Now, since that's such a high statistic, though, 90% of people don't understand and don't understand that they don't understand, and don't mind, but will get upset when highly charged things. So you can keep relationships superficial, and then everyone has a misunderstanding, but it doesn't matter because nothing gets brought up. But as soon as you bring money, sex, and time and identity into the relationship, as soon as there's $1 million on the line, as soon as there's 5 years of your time on the line, as soon as there's deep emotional vulnerability on the line, and as soon as your identity is challenged or invited to change, then people are fanatical that things should be the way they misinterpreted them. I'm sick of it. Because the shallow surface relationships of let's just not touch identity, money, time, let's keep money out of our friendships, let's not spend too much time together, let's never change who we are in any kind of alchemical way, and let's never go into the really deep feelings, and then we can happily misunderstand each other for the rest of our lives, and nobody gets hurt because nothing that anyone cared about was actually on the line. Sex would be in there too, for those people that don't dissociate psychologically from their bodies, which some very promiscuous women do as a way to please a lot of men without it having any impact. They just leave their body when having sex, do all these things, get all the praise and rewards for providing sexual service, and then they come back and have feelings about other things when they're not having sex. So that's an aggravating thing I've run into. It's not that common, but that is one way that, or have sex and be highly attached to all kinds of things, but not clarify what those attachments are, right? So none of that is satisfactory. It's boring to keep it shallow, but if you are going to become highly reactive by putting meaningful things on the line, you're going to actually have to understand each other, which means taking some time in basic communication. Well, that itself is the biggest jumping off point, where 90% of the people I meet do not want to take the time or the risk or the vulnerability to clarify these things, and are shocked at how divergent we are when they do. And then that scares them, as it should. If you realize that you haven't actually been understanding someone, your husband, your partner, whatever, you really have no idea. It should bother you that you not only didn't understand, but you didn't understand that you didn't understand. That's a pretty worrisome trait if you've got a lot on the line. So I go through it, but it's very tiring. But it's kind of food for the loneliness of how often this has happened. Right? So these, and you will feel, if you're paying attention, you will feel the many ways that I'm hurt, alone, and pushing in the putting something in the gear, stopping the machine, rebelling, railing against life, complaining, judging, stopping, boxing, fighting with just this. A lot of it comes back to the vacuousness of my mother, and just the endless need and the void, the ache and the void. But it doesn't mean it's not exhausting. It was exhausting to try and pass through this wound created by my mother at age 6, at age 5. It was exhausting to try and get through to the various people I've, tried to relate to. It's an exhausting orifice to kind of get through myself, to kind of meet my own standards. And it is upsetting to be met with the rage about talking about this. Meaning one of the things that's going on in the probability field right now is absolute reactive rage towards me by women, by emotional people that have a huge emotional reaction around all that I'm saying and that want to get that across by raging. This is usually delivered, in more of a visceral, shouting, emotive, stomping around type energy, which is unpleasant and hard to deal with, not on a rational level. Meaning, I have yet to meet the person that actually grasps every nuance of what I've said here and empathizes with me and really understands the sheer level of exhaustion of going through that. You know, I meet people all the time that tell me in any number of ways that it's too tiring to go through my orifice in order to respond to these different things. But this whole thing, which seems rational, necessary, burdensome, and all that, to me as the conscious mind, feels hostile, hurt, tiring, no fun, and kind of a way for me to punish the world for, one, making me go through all that as an infant, and two, making me go through it now. You know, the endless fears and projections and defenses that I go through to meet with another human being. You know, it's not because most people won't do me the courtesy of describing what I've just described, meaning I have never met a human being who began a relationship or who at any stage in the relationship made me this video. It'd be great if they did. It would be, bravo. This is the main thing going on in the relationship. Let's bring as much awareness into it as possible. Bravo. Well, I'm still waiting, right? That would be one of the wounds. Why doesn't someone else make a video like this for me? Why should I be the one doing this and sitting here figuring out, how much work it takes to figure out how to say these things in words that every cult member in the cult refuses to say? How to put words to the silent, invisible patterns in relationship? You know how much work it takes? You think I enjoy doing this, knowing that the cult has numbers of judgments in the wings, that's weird, it's too time-consuming, it's too picky, it's too effeminate, it's too drama-ridden. The cult has an endless defense system. You're criticizing your wife, you're doing this, well then why did you pick her? There's an endless system in place to keep me at arm's length. And at some point, I just want to, stab the knife in as retaliation, as confirmation that I can have some impact, because I feel endlessly helpless trying to get through these many, many, many veils of misunderstanding and projection. By my count, the average relationship is 9 layers deep in projection upon projection upon projection upon projection based on one another. So it starts out with the first lie, and then it goes to the second lie that is based on the first lie. Then the third lie is based on the second lie. So there's at least 9 layers of lies. And when the person is seeing, they're seeing the 9th lie in relationship to the other 8, and they're mystified, or they're certain that they know exactly what's going on based on 9 lies, and it's junk. But the worst thing is everyone pretends to be too busy to actually establish what the first lie is. No one wants to go back to the first lie and say, well, what is it? What is the first lie? Well, the first lie may be being masculine and assertive and outgoing and getting on and being positive is better. rambling on and not getting to the point and being feminine and being negative. It's better. It's the first lie. You take the one, see, I'm tired of being misunderstood around this. So you take the one, you divide it into half. Now you've got the entire polarity continuum, negativity and positivity, male and female. By the way, all equal halves are equal. It isn't half if it's not an equal half. It just means you don't know how to use a knife. Whether in the abstract or in the literal, if you cut something in half, which is necessary to have a polarity, they are equal. Now, you may like living in a world of civil war where the entire universe is divided into good and bad, positive and negative, male and female, and that the ultimate triumph would be to have half of all of reality kill the other half. And you may be a fool. Many of us are. But that is a lie. When you cut the one into a polarity and say that one is better than the other, that may be the first lie. That then you're now on the other side that's the worst side. But, you know, people have a whole maze of history around that. You know, their parents shaming them and all that. They might have to critically analyze their parents or their favorite teacher or their guru. So the main thing, if we come back to this, particular expression, etc., because, you know, what I saw in the psychedelic experience is that the obsession, the fanatical obsession with the wound, and someone's going to love me the way I want to be loved inside the construct that I've made, that no one's living up to, that no one's doing. So that's actually is the wound. So for the child and adolescent, it is the solution to the helplessness, the pain, the trauma. But to the spiritual witness, to the transcendent witness, this orifice is the blockade, is the black hole that's sucking more and more life energy into the whole. And now this person can't live up to the whole, and this person can't live up to the standard, and this person can't live up, and that one is discounted because it wasn't by the proper deadline, and this one cannot do, and this one, this, and this, and nothing gets, just a few dregs get through the hole, and a very few dregs get by the hole. But other than that, 99.9% of all that is, and all the love, and all the energy that is just deleted. It's not real. It's obscured by the mask of the cult, by the mask of the ego, by the mask of the identity. It's not real. And the solution is to deconstruct the meaning system when possible, to set oneself, to set myself free, allow myself to be tired when I want to be tired, to allow that people will do what they do and it doesn't mean I'm unlovable, to allow that the people that cannot love me. That's very different than I am unlovable. If you are able to love me, you are able to love me. And I become lovable to you in your ability. If you are unable to love me, first of all, you are unable to love the corollaries in yourself. There might have been a long-winded philosopher inside of you. but it was not nourished and nurtured. And you're afraid of being judged if it came out. And so you killed it off with judgment along with the cult environment. And you wouldn't want to give a video like this on your life because you cannot love this part of yourself. So it doesn't develop, right? So there's a corollary, the parts we cannot love in ourselves. I can't love that contractor for not showing up. So I also can't love me if I'm late, which is exactly the same prison and prism. Because I'm late, he made me late, and I can't accept him. He's a disgusting, miserable person who can't even show up for an appointment made an hour and a half in advance. Can't even do this. It's a horrible, unreliable, unprofessional person I want nothing to do with, right? I feel hurt by and humiliated by. I don't want to feel those feelings. I've banished those feelings. I don't want to feel those feelings. Go away, those feelings, right? So then I'm afraid of becoming that to my client, viewed the way I view him. And I'm also afraid that if I expand and am more loving to him and say, well, he's just doing what he's doing, then I will do the same to myself. And I am afraid that I will become someone my clients cannot love, that my clients cannot admire, that my clients are unwilling to pay. And then I'm afraid that without any money, I will become someone that no one will house. And then I will become someone to be treated with contempt. Someone woken up in the middle of the night by the local police force and told to move along. And so this orifice, this cult shape, has an iterative downstepping process. We will not elect a president who tells us the truth. We hate a president who tells us the truth. We elect a president that tells us lies that we want to hear. So the only person that can be elected is someone willing to lie. But we say we hate liars. So we will only elect someone that we hate. It's a very tricky orifice that is constructed. So I think the area that this orifice blinds me unhelpfully is, let's look at what actually went on here. I stopped this appointment or this video at 5 minutes to 4 p.m. so that if he was early, I would be available. He never showed up. Because he didn't show up, love continued flowing. Energy continued flowing in varieties of ways. Not through my orifice. So that part of me feels hurt and unlovable and all that. But I got to eat a better meal. I got to adjust the irrigation timer. I got to play with my dog. And I got to make this video. And this video is far more important to me than a concrete job. That's just what needs to be done to pay the bills, etc. And my client is an understanding client, and I sent them an email update that, I wouldn't be coming because the guy didn't show up. And my fear is there that I have less room, meaning I feel like there's a certain amount of mistakes and being out of control and not knowing and irritation that I can cause before the switch flips and I become a flaky person that nobody wants to do business with, right? And so I feel like my social capital or my business capital has been drawn down maybe 7% by this incident, which is a horrible thing to go through, to work this hard and plan all this and then still end up on the rubbish heap as someone no one's willing to deal with. But I think this structure, the fact that none of us enjoy being run through the ringers to prove that we are good enough, trustworthy, and all that. The fact that none of us enjoy being judged and discarded on the garbage heap as not living up to the filters that were set. And, and this is also done with the red flag system, and it's, people have these red flag system. If you do this and you do this and you do this, up, those are red flags. Why? Because I invented them, right? That's a narcissist, that's a this, and you just said that. So here you're busy, trying to help me understand you and what's this, but I'm busy seeing if you have these red flags and blocking you out, and up. There's a red flag, and you go on the rubbish heap. And so we end up feeling unlovable. And it starts with the belief of unlovable. And then this orifice is the thing that is used to squeeze everything down to the point where very little love gets in, where the identity of unlovability can continue and the status quo of the current norm will continue uninterrupted because it's based on the faulty evidence that almost nothing can get through the orifice. Meanwhile, criminals are willing to smile at you here. People who are sociopathic in this situation are kind in this situation, but you don't trust it, and people, who lied this time are telling the truth this time, and other people are doing the best they can, even though it doesn't fit through your orifice. And life is evolving, and there are billions of planets, and there's less infant mortality per capita pretty much every century for thousands of years, and just one thing after another keeps getting better. Life keeps opening, and there's all of this love all around, waiting and wanting to come in. Some through this little crack, and some through that, and some through this. And the reality is that this video is far more exciting than the concrete person coming on time, so I could say that he is loving me by not showing up when I had this important video to make. But that doesn't make me feel pleased. Wait a minute, that's cheating. The only way I'm supposed to feel loved is if they got through the corridor. He didn't get through the corridor. He's loving me in a bigger way that doesn't fit in the corridor. Reality is out there loving and transcending our little boxes, inviting us to come home, inviting us into the many realms of probability we didn't know, inviting us on the path not traveled, on the neuronal paths we have not taken to new paradigms and ideas, many of which are more beautiful, more majestic, more magnificent than our own. But if I just fixate, he didn't show up on time, I don't get to see that. I don't have to change the belief that I'm unloved. And I don't have to question my identity, my pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. But that is the ultimate gift from a psychedelic. By suppressing blood to the default mode network, the normal path shrinks, and blood starts flowing the way it would have flown before the orifice was constructed. And I see another way of thinking, another way of feeling, another way of being. It's more beautiful. It's more true, it's more good, it's more connected to self and to one. The price is giving up the orifice. The price is giving up a certain amount of control, a certain amount of judgment, a certain amount of demand, a certain amount of punishment, a certain amount of fixation, a certain amount of certainty, a certain amount of familiarity, family, the old family, in order to embrace the multiverse. And in 1,000 different ways, in 1,000 different forms, is inviting the species forward. Into the concrescence of possibility, of space-time, into the unknown.